So recently, Elon Musk sat down with Dwarkesh Patel and John Collison on their podcast, and that discussion lasted 3 hours. It's obviously a lot of information and a lot of content, and it can tend to happen that after such a long discussion, the details kind of get lost and kind of everybody forgets about what was said by the next week. This is one of the reasons we built Skim, which is to A, help you process such a large amount of information very quickly, and then B, give us a way to keep track of the claims and the predictions that are being made over time so that we can come back to this discussion in 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now, and really understand what actually ended up happening. Where did the chips fall in terms of the very significant and humanity impacting predictions that are made in this discussion? And so that's the goal here, is to give you the 5 top claims that were made in this video, as well as highlight some of the conflicts of interest that our tool, brought out, and then eventually let you make your own decisions about the predictions that are being made. So right off the top here, you will see that, our tool gives you these analytics at the very top, and these are supposed to be mostly directional, right? So we have a fairly high confidence score based on not just Elon's track record, but also his detailed technical explanations and the fact that a lot of his claims are based on observable trends. We also see that there's a pretty high pro-space AI bias. And when you see Musk talking about a lot of these claims, they all seem to be filtered through that lens, and it's something to keep in mind. Now, with that, I want to also let you know the fact that you could go and skim the short and medium versions of this video. You don't have to go watch the full hour-long skim. And that's functionality that we have built based on, again, the user being in different situations where may they have less or more time to go through this content. Now, let's go through the first claim, which is almost the headline of the whole interview, which is, in 36 months, space becomes the cheapest place for AI. Let's play what he says.
At this point, we found our GPS to be in 36 months, but probably closer to 30 months, the most economically compelling place to put AI will be space, and then it will get it'll then get like ridiculously better to be in space. And then the scaling, the only place you can really scale is space. Once you start thinking in terms of what percentage of the sun's power are you harnessing, you realize you have to go to space. You can't scale very, very much on Earth.
So 36 months is around Feb of 2029, and closer to 30 is summer of 2028, right? So these are specific enough timelines that we can come back and check. Now, his reasoning here is electricity output everywhere outside of China has basically flatlined. Chip production is still growing massively, and solar panels in space tend to be very much more effective and efficient than they are on the planet, right? There are no clouds, there's no nighttime, there's no atmosphere to block the sunlight. And so his argument is that the moment launch costs drop low enough where it makes sense, then space isn't just competitive, but it's actually dramatically cheaper. One more thing you will note here is that we have marked this claim as high impact because of the fact that this would obviously be a pretty big deal if this happens, and also the fact that he runs SpaceX, he runs Tesla Solar, he runs XAI, and all the components technically exist under one roof. So of course that kind of informs his bias in positing this future outcome, but that's something to be mindful about. Now, the second claim is around the fact that one AI cluster requires a full gigawatt of power. And this is the one that probably, it's not really a prediction about the future. It's more a fact about right now. And I want you to hear Musk walk through the math himself, because this is him being super specific about where all of this is coming from. So let's go to the next claim, and let's play that for you.
The noobs will look at the power consumption of say a GB300 and multiply that by a thing, and then think that's the amount of power you need.
All the cooling and everything.
Wake up, yeah. This is like that's a total noob. You've never done any hardware in your life before. Besides the GB300, You've got to power all of the networking hardware. There's a whole bunch of CPU and storage stuff that's happening. You've got to size for your peak cooling requirements. So that means, can you cool even on the worst hours, the worst day of the year? Well, it gets pretty freaking hot in Memphis. So, so you're going to have like a 40% increase on your power just for cooling. If assuming you don't want your data center to turn off on hot days, and you want to keep going, then you got to say, well, there's another multiplicative element on top of that, which is, are you assuming that you never have any hiccups in your power generation? Like, oh, well, actually, sometimes we have to take the generators, some of the power offline in order to service it. Oh, okay, now you add another 20-25% multiplier on that, because you've got to assume that you've got to take power offline to service it. So the actual
So there you hear him stack the math, right? So the chips, the networking, the cooling, the reserve margin, and the number that he arrives at, which he actually gets asked again in the conversation later on, is roughly 1 gigawatt of power generation for a single cluster of 330,000 GB300 chips. 1 gigawatt is one large nuclear reactor's output. It's what powers about 750,000 American homes. And all of the major companies, whether it's the big tech companies or the frontier labs, whether it's Anthropic, OpenAI, XAI, Meta, Google, are each trying to build several of these clusters, right? So everybody's reading the AI headlines like it's a race for the best model, which obviously that's a factor. But underneath all of that, the constraint is shifting to who can generate the power, who can own the power. And the chip story is slowly becoming really the power story. And again, this is where Elon's focus on power generation comes in. Now, the next claim is probably my favorite one because it's so specific and it's so kind of eye-poppingly ambitious, similar to many claims that Musk has made in the past, and many of them have ended up actually coming true and some haven't. But the next claim is talking about 10,000 Starship launches per year. And this is a very specific operational target for SpaceX. And the number is wild enough that I want you to hear how casually Musk and Dwarkesh kind of go through that together.
Yes.
And you want to do that in 1 year. And so that's like one Starship launch every hour.
Yeah.
That's happening in this city. Like, walk me through a world where there's a Starship launch every single hour.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a low rate compared to airlines, like aircraft.
There's a lot of airports.
A lot of airports, but
And you got to launch this, the polar orbit.
no, it doesn't have to be polar, but there's some value to sun synchronous, but I think actually you just go high enough, you start getting out of Earth's shadow, so.
How many physical Starships are needed to do 10,000 launches a year?
I don't think we'll need more than. I mean, you could probably do it with as few as like 20 or 30. It really depends on how quickly does the ship has to go around the Earth, and the ground track for the ship has to come back over the launch pad. So if you can use a ship every, say, 30 hours, you could do it with 30 ships. But we'll make more ships than that. But the SpaceX is gearing up to do 10,000 launches a year, and maybe even 20 or 30,000 launches a year.
Is the idea to become basically a hyperscaler, become an oracle, and lend this capacity to other people? What are you going to do with? Presumably, SpaceX is the one launching all this.
So that's an amazing claim, right? 10,000 launches a year is one per hour. For context, the entire global launch industry last year, every rocket, every country, every customer combined, was a few hundred attempts over the course of the year. So Musk is describing one company doing more than 30 times the global total in a couple of years, let's say by 2030, 2031. And our system actually marked this as high impact because while this is a bold claim, if it turns out to be true, it stops being a SpaceX story, right? Everything has to be defined around this. Air traffic systems, launch insurance markets, satellite debris regulation, international space law. None of that is designed for even a 5 times increase in the number of launches that we're doing, leave alone a 30 times increase. And so the question stops being around whether SpaceX can build that many rockets and launch that many rockets, and becomes more about whether everything around them and the system itself can handle that volume. I now want to move on to a slightly different part of the discussion, which is less about space and more about Optimus Prime, which is their, I guess Optimus is their robot. And let's play this claim because I think it's just a fascinating insight into the way that they're thinking about the future. Here, Elon talks about the infinite money glitch from physical robots.
Like in the limit, that's the best you can do before you have a physical Optimus. The best you can do is a digital Optimus. So you can move electrons until you can amplify the productivity of humans. But that's the most you can do until you have physical robots. That will superset everything. Is if you can fully emulate humans.
This is the remote worker kind of idea, where you'll have a very talented remote worker.
You can simply say in the limit. Like physics has great tools for thinking. So you say in the limit, what is the most that AI can do before you have robots? And it's anything that involves moving electrons or amplifying the productivity of humans. So digital human emulator.
Yes.
Is in the limit. Human at a computer is the most that AI can do, in terms of doing useful things before you have a physical robot. Once you have physical robots, then you can then you essentially have unlimited capability. Physical robots, I call Optimus the infinite money glitch, because
you can use them to make more Optimuses.
Yeah, you said like humanoid robots will improve as will basically be three exponentials, three things that are growing exponentially multiplied by each other.
Yes.
Recursively. So you're going to have you have exponential increase in digital intelligence, exponential increase in the chip capability, the AI chip capability, and an exponential increase in the electromechanical dexterity. The usefulness of the robot is roughly those three things multiplied by each other. But then the robot can start making the robots.
So it's interesting here, right? Like this idea that robots will build robots and the cost will drop and the capability will rise because these three curves are meeting, which is digital intelligence, chip capability, and electromechanical dexterity. That is an interesting premise and really ambitious. Now, this is flagged as high impact, not necessarily because Optimus exists at scale right now, but because this recursive manufacturing idea has been the holy grail of robotics for a long time. And Musk is the first person who's saying that he wants to do this, and not just that he wants to do it, but that he owns the entire stack to do it. He owns the chip stack. Eventually, he owns the AI company and the factory floor to seriously get after this goal. And I think his timeline in this interview is kind of loose. He says this decade or so, without being specific on the year. But the claim is that the economics of labor fundamentally will change in 10 years. Not 20 years, not 30 years, but 10 years, which is in the coming decade. And then finally, I'd like to play another clip here, which is very instructive for how they're thinking about future revenue opportunities within AI.
They're on track to spend over like $50 to $100 billion.
You mean the corporations?
Sorry, yeah. Corporations.
The labs are at universities and they're moving like a snail.
They're not spending $50 billion.
You mean the revenue maximizing corporations?
That's right. But the revenue maximizing corporations
that call themselves labs
are making like 20 to 10 billion, depending. Like OpenAI is making 20 B revenue. Anthropic's like 10 B.
Close to a maximum profit AI.
XAI is reportedly at like 1 B. Like, what's the plan to get to their compute level, get to their revenue level, and stay there as things get scaling?
Yeah. So as soon as you unlock digital human, you basically have access to trillions of dollars of revenue. In fact, you can really think of it like the most valuable companies currently by market cap. Their output is digital. So NVIDIA's output is FTPing files to Taiwan. It's digital.
Right.
Now, those are very, very difficult to...
high-value files.
They're the only ones that can make files that good. But that is literally their output. They FTP files to Taiwan.
Do they FTP them?
I believe so. I believe that is the
SFTP.
file transfer protocol. I believe is. But I could be wrong. But either way, it's a bit stream going to Taiwan.
Yeah.
Apple doesn't make phones. They.
So again, his argument here is that once AI can do anything that a human can do on a computer, they basically become digital human emulators, and the addressable market stops being just SaaS, and it instead ends up becoming the entire white collar wage base. That's about $20 trillion globally, and if a company could capture even 10% of that, that's $2 trillion in revenue. And this is why he claims that kind of the current revenue of these AI companies are going to look like rounding errors when they're looked at in hindsight. And that's his claim, that the 20, 30, $40 billion run rates that the Anthropics and the ChatGPT OpenAI labs are at is eventually in hindsight going to look like a rounding error if they're able to capture this value. And of course, a lot rides on this actually turning out, right? Like the AI models have to be good enough at many different tasks. White collar work has a lot of nuances, a lot of specifics. There's relationships involved. I mean, that's an entirely different discussion to go into. And so I thought this was a good selection of the top 5 claims to be highlighted here. I do want to briefly also touch on the conflicts of interest that were found that you can find at the very bottom here. And I think this is an interesting panel because you can get to understand kind of what's going on behind the scenes with the folks that are involved in this story that may be motivating their thesis, maybe motivating their like day-to-day work. They may want to be nudging or wanting to nudge the industry in a certain direction because of their ownership of specific companies. So of course, the first one is the obvious one, which is like all of the companies that he owns together build together towards that vision of putting chips into space. That's the obvious one. He has a commercial interest in dominating the field of AI. This is more of a personal pro-humanity bias, which I can't hold that against him. I think that's really, really important. And then, of course, we talked about the companies again. So I think one important thing to say here is, like, for example, here you can state that there's a lot of big projections being made here, and a lot of them have financial implications, operational implications for him, for his companies, for the economy, and for competitors and international involvement as well. And so these are all things that one should be aware of in the back of our minds as we are watching an interview like this. I want to end with something that took me a while to figure out how to say. The internet we grew up with was built for finding things. Search worked. You typed a question, you got an answer. The internet we have now is built for being shown things. Algorithms, feeds, recommendations, 3-hour podcasts that show up in your library without you really even asking for it. And so this consumption surface has now gotten enormous. There's videos, there's podcasts, there's threads, there's tweets, there's live streams, there's AI generated everything. But the credibility surface hasn't really kept up, right? You still have your 2 eyes and 1 attention span. And maybe a few minutes of real focus a day if you really want to focus on that kind of information, if it's not related to your job necessarily. And so what we just did in the last 20 minutes is the bet that I'm making, that there's a missing layer on top of all that content where AI can actually serve a good, where it can actually screen that information for us, where we can then collaborate on the most salient pieces of that information with other humans and potentially with AI. A structural layer that surfaces not just the confidence level and the bias and conflicts of interest that may exist in any online media or any online claims, but also a way for you to get to the point, like save you time, save you your sanity. If you're looking at information that's obviously biased or that's outdated or that doesn't quite fit into where it's being portrayed, then you should know that, sort of a consumption co-pilot for you. And so if that resonates with you, please check out the product. It's called Skim. It can do this for any long video, any long news article. We have a Chrome extension. We have our native app on the iPhone and Android. And of course, we also have our website at skim.plus. We'll be linking this skim of Musk's interview in the description, and I would love for your feedback as well.